In Zelda Ocarina of Time, we find Dark Link in the dreaded Water Temple. He's you with all the same attacks and moves, but he's the dark, shadow, evil version of you. Carl Jung is a 20th century Swiss psychiatrist and the founder of analytical philosophy. While many of Jung's works are extremely interesting and influential, one of his most interesting and influential ideas is his work on what he calls the shadow, or shadow self. In some ways, Dark Link is very reminiscent of Jung's shadow self. It is literally a shadow version of your character, but Dark Link is more a good visual representation of this than anything. To look at a better representation of this in video games, we can look at Persona. In Persona, there's the metaverse. No, not that one, get out of here, Zuck. In the metaverse, everyone is their most true self. Nothing is hidden. For the heroes, this gives them cool suits and superpowers. But for our villains, we see their deepest, darkest, truest selves. The selves that they hide away from everyone. Their hidden desires for hedonism or power. This is what Jung is talking about. This is the shadow self, the part of us that we lock away. Carl Jung talks about dealing with the shadow self through what he calls shadow work. In Persona, this is as simple as finding the shadow and fighting a JRPG boss. But reality isn't so kind. Jung's shadow work process has many steps, starting with finding and pointing out the shadow, but getting much more complicated than fighting a JRPG boss. To look at a more abstract and somber look at the shadow self and shadow work, let's talk about Silent Hill 2. In Silent Hill 2, the entire town and the horrors of Silent Hill was created from James Sunderland's fear of his shadow self. Before the game began, James' wife was dying of cancer, and he took it upon himself to put her out of her misery, because he was so tired of taking care of her, of seeing her like this. Just as cancer slowly killed Mary from the inside, James's shadow self would slowly threaten him from the inside. The game's enemies can provide a closer look at what exactly this shadow self is. The slutty zombie nurses represent the nurses who worked taking care of his wife. These nurses are dressed skimpy, busty, with hourglass figures. But they are horrifying, faceless zombies. Now, many of our brains are wired to enjoy busty women with this figure, so when you look at these nurses, your brain has this sort of short circuit of attraction mixed with disgust. This is the exact same way James Sunderland feels when he looked at the nurses helping his wife. They're good-looking women, and he can't help but notice, but the shame and horror of feeling that, while his wife lay dying, is impossible to escape. So James fears that if he has these terrible feelings at this time, if deep down he's this terrible, then what could he become if he completely let go? If he fed into all his darkest desires? Pyramid Head is the epitome of this, the absolute worst he could possibly become if he let his darkest feelings run rampant and take control. Why does James go to Silent Hill? Well, the start of the game, he says it was their place, him and Mary's. Now, just like all his feelings towards Mary, the place is corrupted and decaying. Of course, he would have to come here. James's journey through Silent Hill is his shadow work, exploring and facing down all the horrors within him, heading deeper and deeper into the shadow. Silent Hill is a horrifying place. It's a terrible journey for James. He could get lost to Silent Hill, he could die or go mad, but he has to go. He has to face it, because it's the only way he'll ever be able to accept the shadow in himself, and the one that killed his wife. Now, to get a bit lighter, and look at a more broad and universal representation of the shadow self, we can take a look at Star Wars. First, we'll talk about Knights of the Old Republic. Just the first one, because the second one is focused around a whole another topic. Knights of the Old Republic sees you fighting against the Sith Empire, and Darth Malak, its leader. But towards the end of the game, it reveals the only plot twist that could ever rival Luke, I am your father. Spoilers for a very old game. Your character is Darth Revan, once Darth Malak's master. The Jedi erased your memory and implanted fake ones. This is when the game's true conflict reveals itself. Malik isn't the real villain of KOTOR. Revan is. The battle between changing into a new man, following the light, or turning back to the darkness, the ways of old. The part of yourself that the Jedi hid away, even from you. Now that you've become aware of your shadow self, it's up to you to choose to be good, or to give in to it. We can also look at Return of the Jedi. The final confrontation in the Emperor's throne room may seem like a fight between Luke and Darth Vader. But the real battle is between Luke and Anakin's light side versus the Emperor, Darth Vader, and Luke's shadow self. The black robes of the Sith and Darth Vader's jet black suit are obviously a visual metaphor for the shadow self having taken over their entire being, even if unintentional. What we can learn from Star Wars is that we cannot kill our shadow selves with hate, but only through love and forgiveness of our shadow self can the darkest things be destroyed. Anakin is supposed to show that while attachment is what brings the dark side, it is human nature to have attachment, and you can't defeat that. Luke then shows how you can defend against the dark side. Through love and forgiveness, change can come. KOTOR tries to show this with Bastila, does it to a lesser degree of success, and it comes across more of repeating a Star Wars trope. You might think this sounds like a bad idea. Love, accept, and forgive the shadow self sounds like a bad plan. But the shadow self is there whether you like it or not. And it's tricky, just like the dark side of the Force. If you fear the shadow self, it will anger you. Anger will lead you to hate it, and hate only ends in suffering. We find ourselves in the same scenario as Luke Skywalker in the throne room. If you hate the shadow self and seek to kill it, the irony is it has already taken control. Shadow work isn't always so dramatic and physical, though. Much of it happens within ourselves, through art and other things exploring our internal darkness. Playing Silent Hill, going on a killing spree in Grand Theft Auto, or playing an evil playthrough in an RPG are all shadow work for me, probably for you. Exploring the darker sides of my psyche through fantasy, where there are no consequences. Jung doesn't want you to follow your shadow, or let it lead you. It's the very opposite. Only through seeing it, understanding it, and accepting it can we learn what to do with it. But just remember, shadow work can be risky. When James keeps pushing through Silent Hill, or Luke throws his lightsaber aside, they're taking a massive risk, leaving themselves vulnerable to danger and being overtaken by the shadow self. Be careful out there. Thanks for watching.